Namaste, welcome to Youth TV Show Season 9. In today's episode, we have engineering students from Stanford University presenting their designs on eco-conscious, economically enriched and earthquake-resistant mountain village in Nepal.
We're a team of 7 engineering students from Stanford University in the United States. Over the past 4 weeks, we've been developing designs for new houses to be built in Silung, a rural village in the Dholaka district of Nepal. We spent some time in the village interviewing some of the local families, trying to understand the existing vernacular style of the homes, what they do and don't like about their homes, and how they would currently use them. We also took a look at the site where the homes would be located in order to let the topography and the views influence our design process. With this information, we've been developing designs for sustainable earthquake-resistant homes in Silung that we're excited to share for you.
The site visit helped us contextualize where our project would be located and truly understand the needs and values of the people who would be living in the houses that we design. Through interviews with the locals and tours of their current homes and farmland, we were able to identify 2 main conceptual ideas that were unique to our design while still fitting within the limits of earthquake-resistant structure and a vernacular style local to the region. 1, an open common space, and 2, a flexible private space. One of the most memorable moments of this trip was when our entire team sat on the front deck of a house eating freshly boiled potatoes with a family that lived there. We felt very welcomed by this warm gesture, and after hearing other stories of how the villagers welcomed their guests, we felt that it was incredibly important for us to recreate this space in our design. In addition to a similar outdoor deck space covered by a roof overhang at the front of the house, we decided to bring this potato space inside the house as well. We did this by incorporating a tall, open kitchen, living, dining space that would help facilitate these special moments even during the colder winter months. In this diagram, the tall 1.5-story space is indicated in red. We felt that this room with higher ceilings would create a more spacious area with more ventilation and more light. This also promotes social interaction in a space that is just as welcoming and just as inviting as the villagers themselves. Pictured here is a rendering of what the potato scene might look like inside the house. We also noticed that each family's physical living conditions were influenced by their specific needs and family sizes. Because we want a design that is easily replicable across all hilly regions of Nepal, we created a plan that could be easily adapted to best fit the lifestyles of those who would live in them without having to redesign the entire structural system. While all houses would contain the tall living space in the front, the house is organized on a 6-foot by 12-foot grid so that the rooms in the back half of the house can be rearranged in any orientation that the residents would prefer. This diagram shows the different shades of blue representing different rooms of different functions and the different ways they can be arranged in the back of the house. Although this image depicts a medium-sized prototype, a house can have as little as 2 12-foot by 12-foot bedrooms or as many as 5. All houses would include a bathroom and storage space inside the house as well. Finally, our prototype for the medium-sized house includes a small window from the second-floor private area, looking into the tall common space below. This provides a visual connection between the public and private areas of the house.
After coming up with our design strategy for both the site and for the house, we used some digital tools to help us evaluate our designs. These tools help us integrate architecture, structural design, energy efficiency, and thermal comfort into one complete concept. By creating a 3D model of the house, we can digitally experience what it's like to actually be inside the rooms. Here, we're looking around the kitchen and dining space to see how the windows and openings, structural design, and furniture layouts look from the inside. We can also experience what the design looks like from the outside, standing on the site. This can help us understand if the design fits in with the area around it. When designing a house in a climate that gets both cold and hot, it's important to regulate the interior temperature of the house as much as possible. In the northern hemisphere, the sun moves across the southern half of the sky, casting its powerful rays on the southern walls of our buildings. This solar energy can help us heat the house in the winter if we let the solar energy in through the windows. We can take our 3D model and digitally place it in the exact region of Nepal that our site is located. Then we can see how the winter sun shines on the house. Since no shadows are being cast on the windows, our concept of heating the house with the sun is working. In the summer and fall, however, it can get quite hot in the hilly regions of Nepal, so we want to let as little of that solar energy into our house as possible. The roof overhang in our design does a nice job of keeping the sun's rays off our windows, helping the house stay cool when it's hot outside. These digital modeling tools can help us quickly evaluate the architectural concepts, structural designs, and aspects of comfort that are critical to building a better house.
One of our design goals for this project was to figure out how to design for thermal comfort. Thermal comfort describes the conditions in which you might feel too hot, too cold, or comfortable within a space. Indoor thermal comfort can be based on a variety of factors, such as the weather, how much insulation or thermal mass you might have in your building, or even what you're doing or wearing indoors. And because we're designing for a climate that's constantly changing, this becomes an especially important challenge. So, to improve thermal comfort, house designers will often look at a variety of design factors, such as heating and cooling devices, building materials, and ventilation. One strategy we used was thermal mass, the ability for certain materials to resist changes in temperature. Materials that are higher in thermal mass are able to capture heat during the day when the sun is out and warm, and release it during the colder hours of the night in order to keep the house at a constant temperature. For that reason, we chose materials like mud and stone for our walls and floors. And for days when it's cold outside and you don't want to lose heat from your home, insulation materials like rock wool are a great option for keeping your spaces warm. We also used cross ventilation, which occurs when you have openings in your doors and windows that are arranged on opposite sides of a building, allowing air to enter and exit. We placed our windows and doors strategically in this manner in order to keep our house cooler. This design is effective because it allows for more frequent changes of air in and out of the house, naturally keeping the indoor temperature cooler when it's hot outside. Finally, to heat our homes, we wanted to look at an option that was more efficient than popular space heaters, which can often create cold spots. Because traditional heaters warm the air and not the objects or people inside, there could be areas of the room that are extremely hot or cold based on where they are relative to the heater. We decided to explore a technology called radiant heating. Radiant heating supplies warmth through the floors directly to the people and objects in the room. And because the system does not use fans to spread heat, it will quietly heat your room while avoiding the spread of dust or other allergens all over your space. For our design, we've chosen an electric-based radiant flooring system to be installed on the first floor of the home. Here, the wires are laid out in an organized diagram under the floors of the home, and they're controlled by a thermostat located at the entrance of the house. With information on these features and technologies becoming more readily available on the internet and in professional practice, we hope these ideas become more readily available technologies in the newly built houses in the hill regions of Nepal.
Perhaps the most important thing about a house in Nepal or any structure is that it is earthquake resistant. Keep in mind that it is not possible to make any building 100% earthquake proof, but there are some strategies we can follow when designing a house to help it perform better should an earthquake occur and ultimately limit the damage as much as possible. Here are a few rules of thumb we followed that will help to improve the earthquake resistance of our village home design. First, we decided to place our house on flat ground because flat ground is much more stable than sloped ground. Second, we used symmetric geometry and avoided having any irregular shapes or rooms that are too long or thin. We also used diagonal timber members so that earthquake forces can be resisted, designed a proper connection for our house to its foundation, and used a lightweight roof.
We wanted to design the house using as many local materials as possible. Using local materials helps keep the house consistent with the vernacular architecture of Silung and helps keep the cost of the house as low as possible. We also wanted to demonstrate that it's possible to build an earthquake-resistant home out of local materials like mud, stone, and wood, not reinforced concrete. Reinforced concrete is expensive and generally incompatible with the vernacular architectural style of Nepal, and so building an earthquake-resistant home out of local materials is much better. Materials like mud and stone are better suited to the climate of the Nepali hillside. Houses made of mud and stone generally provide better thermal comfort than houses made of concrete. Mud and stone houses are cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter than concrete ones. We decided to make the structural system out of pine wood, which is strong, durable, locally available, and provides good thermal insulation. To make the walls of the house, we filled in the gaps between the timber frame with mud and stone and covered both the interior and the exterior of the house with a layer of mud finish. These walls were designed to feel very similar to the walls in a traditional Nepali hill house so that villagers would feel comfortable in the house that we've designed. We decided to make the roof out of corrugated steel because steel is light compared to stone, and this low weight of the roof makes the house much safer in earthquakes.
The materials and structural system we used were partly inspired by research, but also largely guided by some of the designs created by Nepal's National Reconstruction Authority, which are available to anyone on the internet. For example, our house design uses very similar foundations to the timber design from the catalog, and our design also has the commonly used wooden truss and corrugated steel sheet for the roof structure. Another key point is that if mud and stone are properly reinforced, then they are perfectly safe materials to use in walls for an earthquake-resistant house. Where the NRA has used bamboo or steel to reinforce the mud and stone, we have chosen to use timber.
The structural system we decided to use is called Daji Dewari. It consists of a timber frame with mud and stone filling the gaps between the timber. The system is commonly used in other earthquake-prone regions of the world like Pakistan, India, and Haiti, but is not yet common in Nepal. We chose to use this system because it's proven to be earthquake resistant, it's compatible with the vernacular architectural style of Nepal, and we think that the system could be replicated throughout the country.
The idea behind the Daji Dewari system is that there is a wooden frame for supporting the weight of the building itself, as well as everything else inside it. The closely spaced frame allows for there to be a lot of diagonal timber members between the gaps. These diagonals are the primary way for resisting earthquake forces. Then, the triangular spaces between the diagonals can be filled with mud and stone. The mud and stone infill helps to absorb energy from the earthquake and helps to protect the diagonals and timber frame from damage. The timber frame is designed to act as one continuous unit by using special interlocking wood connections held together by nails. The roof is also a timber frame, but instead of using mud or stone, it uses corrugated steel as a cover.
It was important to us to choose a structural system that could be used in houses of several different sizes. If villagers want to build a small house, a medium-sized house, or a large house, all of these houses could be supported by the same Daji Dewari structural system.
One main concern our design hopes to eliminate is fuel dependence. In urban Nepal, LPG is by far the most common form of fuel for cooking, heating, lighting, or otherwise. This fuel is of course primarily imported from India and is therefore susceptible to price fluctuation. In rural Nepal, especially in the high mountain region of Sailung Dolaka, fuel imports and transportation costs become exponentially more expensive. It is for this reason our design will incorporate localized fuel generation by way of anaerobic digesters. Biogas is a sustainable, reliable, if properly maintained, clean fuel option with a multitude of useful applications. The inputs are waste from livestock, food, agriculture, and in many cases humans. When these elements are combined and mixed in a dome at proper temperatures and pressures, the output is raw biogas, which, when filtered, can be directly piped to a stovetop burner. The leftover slurry in the digester can then be used as active fertilizer. This process is an efficient, environmentally friendly option to fuel sourcing. The initial design will include 2 digesters located slightly downhill from the flatland, but still near the larger kitchen dining area. This simplifies the piping infrastructure, hides the smell of the digester, and locates the post-fermentation fertilizer near the agriculture. Part of the difficulty of anaerobic digester operation in high-altitude regions is maintaining optimum slurry temperatures during the winter months. This concern will be mitigated by thermal insulation of the dome, as well as a protective structure to shield the digester from weather variances. Beyond external protection, future plans will hopefully incorporate active solar heating for potential below freezing temperatures in the winter. In addition to energy, social and health motivations have greatly influenced the design of the digester operation. 3 key points summarize these influences: improved air quality, gender inequality, and employment. As it stands, the majority of rural villages use firewood, dung, and other solid forms of biomass as fuel for cooking. Stoves are typically primitive and highly inefficient. Suboptimal burning conditions generate extremely harmful, poisonous pollutants that directly affect those who are repeatedly exposed. Poor air quality in the kitchen is a leading cause of death as well as severe illness in Nepal and other communities in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa with insufficient energy access. When you cook inside, with minimal cross-ventilation, multiple hours a day, the kitchen very quickly becomes the most dangerous room in the house. Women, often the designated cooks for the family, bear the brunt of these consequences. Which brings us to gender inequality. Women are not only disproportionately exposed to high concentrations of harmful pollutants, they also spend much of their time searching and looking for fuel. These are hours that could be spent learning to read or write, as literacy rates for females in rural villages are troublingly lower than their male counterparts, nurturing or teaching children, or assisting in agricultural work and contributing to the primary source of family income. To be seen as producers, not strictly reproducers. Finally, Proper maintenance and management of the anaerobic digester operation can and should be treated as a full-time job. In many cases of communal biogas operation, responsibility falls to no particular individual. There's no sense of personal accountability. As a result, the daily input requirement for the digesters is not always met, and biogas production plummets or stops altogether. By permanently employing workers to tend to the digesters, manage the daily inputs, and be responsible for the production of biogas, the likelihood of success is much higher. Employment not only provides a reliable source of income to promote higher standards of living, it legitimizes the biogas waste operations system as a model for local communities as well as neighboring villages to invest in similar protocols.
Two central themes that we considered in our design process was waste and water. The first, waste management, is something that is definitely lacking in rural Nepal, as we got to witness firsthand on our trip to Sailung. Trash seems to be everywhere these days, and this is a large problem and one that will not be solved overnight. The first thing that we wanted to do was create a central, localized place for trash to be both collected and sorted. Designating a specific location for waste collection is very important for sustainability, as well as properly managing that waste. Overall, this is a very simple concept. All you need are 3 large containers, one for compost, one for recycling, and one for trash. What goes into the compost? This can be any types of food waste, from leftover rice to corn husks that you never used. What goes into recycling? This could be papers, plastics, glass, metals, things like that. And finally, what goes into trash? These are things that can't be recycled or composted, like chip bags or used toilet paper. We believe that creating a central location for trash allows people to learn how to sort their trash as well as keep litter off the streets. The next step is, what do you do with that trash once it's been collected and sorted? This is a much more complicated problem. While the solution for what to do with this trash was outside the scope of this project, we can offer a couple ideas for future solutions. First, all of the compost can go straight into the biogas digester. As for trash and recycling, currently this would need to be picked up by a truck and brought down the mountain to the nearest waste management center. However, there are lots of possibilities for things you can do to reduce the amount of waste that has to get taken down the mountain. Some actions that you can easily take are reducing the amount of waste that you create and reusing any created waste. There are many interesting ways and innovative ways to reuse a lot of the trash that we throw out every day. One way we found particularly interesting was using plastic bottles and plastic containers and creating housing insulation from them. The second theme we considered was water collection. When we spoke with many of the villagers on our site visit, they mentioned that water could be very hard to find in the winter months. One solution that we've incorporated into our design is a rainwater collection system. We saw the system in many of the houses that Habitat for Humanity has been rebuilding, and it's a really great and easy way to store and collect rainwater. The system consists of PVC pipes that line the gutter, and they act as a funnel for any rainwater that comes off of the roof. They then funnel this rainwater into a large collection tank. This rainwater can be used for many things, like cooking, agriculture, showering, and cleaning. With some basic filtration systems, it can also be used as safe drinking water. Ultimately, we hope our design will serve as a model for this community and other local neighboring villages. We hope that they will invest in proper waste management, commit to clean fuel sources, and hold themselves to a higher standard of cleanliness.
We hope the manuals provide innovative concepts to aspiring young engineers on sustainable designs. We will be back next week with a new episode of Youth TV Show. Until then, have a great week ahead. Namaste.